I am sitting on my front porch on a quiet Sunday afternoon, watching the neighbors walk their dogs, and I cannot help but think about how drastically everything changed 6 weeks ago. My wife Amanda used to sit right here beside me, her hand in mine, talking about our future. Now the space next to me feels impossibly empty. I never imagined that 3 words could destroy a 5-year marriage, but when she looked me in the eyes and said, "This is not cheating," I knew my world was about to collapse. That sentence still echoes in my head every single day. Before I tell you how my marriage ended on my front porch in front of the entire neighborhood, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe, because this story about blind trust and brutal awakening might just save you from making the same mistake I did. Now let me take you back to when I still believed her. Amanda and I got married 5 years ago in a small ceremony in Portland, Oregon, where we settled into a cozy house in a friendly suburban neighborhood. I work as a software engineer from home, which gave me the flexibility to be around a lot. Amanda worked as a marketing manager at a mid-sized tech company downtown. Our life felt perfectly ordinary in the best possible way. We spent our weeknights cooking dinner together, experimenting with new recipes we found online. On weekends, we would take our golden retriever Max on long walks through the nearby trails. Our neighbors knew us well. To our left lived Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, a retired couple in their 70s who always waved hello. To our right was a young family with 2 energetic kids who played basketball in their driveway every evening. Everything started shifting about 6 months before our separation. Amanda got reassigned to work under a new supervisor named Damien Hartwell. He was somewhere in his early 40s, recently divorced, and had built quite a reputation within the company as someone both talented and charismatic. At first, I thought it was great that Amanda had found a mentor who recognized her potential. She started mentioning him during dinner conversations, saying things like, "Damien thinks I have real leadership potential," or "Damien wants me to lead the new product launch." I felt proud that my wife was finally getting the recognition she deserved after years of being overlooked. Then I started noticing small changes. Amanda began putting more effort into her work wardrobe. She bought new blazers, pencil skirts, and professional dresses. She spent extra time in the morning perfecting her makeup and styling her hair. When I complimented her, she would smile and say she just wanted to present herself more professionally now that she was working on higher-profile projects. I had no reason to question it. Why would I? She was my wife, and I trusted her completely. The late nights started around the same time. Amanda used to be home by 6 in the evening, but suddenly she was not walking through the door until 8 or 9 at night. Whenever I asked about it, she explained that Damien needed her to stay late for meetings about the big project they were launching. She said the deadlines were tight and the stakes were high. I understood, or at least I tried to. I worked in tech too. I knew how demanding launch schedules could be, but it was not just the weeknights anymore. On Saturdays and Sundays, Amanda would be glued to her laptop, constantly checking her email and responding to messages. One evening, I walked past her while she was texting, and I saw her smiling at her phone in a way I had not seen in months. When I asked what was so funny, she quickly said Damien sent me a hilarious meme about our competitor. I felt a small twist in my stomach, but I pushed it down. I told myself I was being paranoid. One night I spent hours preparing Amanda's favorite meal, homemade pasta carbonara, with garlic bread and a fresh Caesar salad. I set the table with candles, hoping we could have a quiet evening together like we used to. But she came home past 9, barely looked at the food, ate a few bites while scrolling through her phone, and then excused herself to go upstairs and finish some work. I sat alone at that dining table, staring at the candles burning down, feeling more invisible than I ever had in my entire life. The physical distance between us grew just as much as the emotional one. Amanda joined a new gym and started going 5 days a week, sometimes even on her lunch breaks. She changed her hairstyle to something sleeker and more polished. She wore perfume every single day, even on weekends when we were just staying home. And our intimacy, which had always been a strong part of our relationship, completely disappeared. Whenever I tried to initiate anything, she would say she was exhausted from work, or stressed about the project, or just not in the mood. It got to the point where we had not been close in over a month, and she did not seem to notice or care. One Friday night, Amanda told me she had to go to a team dinner and would not be home until late. I offered to wait up for her, but she said not to bother. So I sat on the couch alone with Max curled up beside me eating leftover Chinese food straight from the container and watching a movie I could not focus on. I kept glancing at my phone, waiting for a text that never came. She finally got home after midnight, slipped into bed without saying a word, and turned away from me. I lay awake in the dark, listening to her breathing and wondering when we had become strangers. I could not take it anymore. One night after she came home late again, I confronted her. I told her I felt like she was spending all her time and energy on work and leaving nothing for us. Amanda immediately became defensive. She said I did not understand the pressure she was under, that this was a career-defining opportunity for her, and that I should be supportive instead of jealous. Then I brought up Damien. I said it seemed like she talked about him constantly, more than she talked about anything else. Her face flushed with anger. She accused me of being insecure and jealous over nothing. She said Damien was just her boss, and I was making something out of nothing. The argument ended with both of us going silent. That night, Amanda slept with her back turned to me, and the space between us in that bed felt like an ocean. 2 weeks after that fight, Amanda dropped a bombshell. She told me she had to go on a business trip to Las Vegas for a week-long conference. Damien wanted her to come along to help present their new project to potential investors. My gut screamed that something was wrong, but what could I say? She was an adult. It was her job. I could not forbid her from going. So I drove her to the airport that Monday morning, gave her a hug that she barely returned, and watched her walk through the terminal without looking back. That entire week felt like torture. Amanda barely called me. When she did, the conversations were brief and surface level. She would say she was busy with meetings all day, too tired to talk at night, and that she would call me later. Her texts were even worse. Just one-word responses like busy or tired or fine. I tried to convince myself that she really was just overwhelmed with work, but deep down, I knew something had changed. I could feel it in my bones. When Amanda came home that Sunday night, I picked her up from the airport, hoping things would feel normal again. But the moment she got in the car, I knew they would not. She would not look me in the eyes. She answered my questions with short, clipped responses. The drive home was suffocating. When we got to the house, I made dinner, set the table, and tried to start a conversation about her trip. She pushed her food around her plate and said it was fine. Just fine. Nothing more. I could not hold it in any longer. After dinner, I looked at her across the table and asked her directly if something was going on between her and Damien. The silence that followed felt endless. She stared down at her hands, and I could see her jaw tighten. Then she finally spoke. She said, "Do you know that Damien understands me in ways you do not? You are so focused on your own work that you never really pay attention to my career or my ambitions." I felt like I had been punched in the chest. I asked her again if something had happened between them. She hesitated, then said, "We have a special connection, but this is not cheating, Gregory." It is a deep intellectual and professional bond. I could not believe what I was hearing. I asked her what she meant by connection. She said that Damien made her feel valued and seen in ways I had not in a long time. I tried to stay calm. I told her that having romantic feelings for someone else, even if she had not acted on them physically, was still a betrayal of our marriage. She shook her head and insisted it was not like that. She said they had not done anything wrong, that it was just an emotional connection, and I would not understand, because I had never experienced anything like it. Then she dropped the real bomb. She said she needed time to think about our marriage. She was going to stay with Damien for a little while to clear her head and figure out what she really wanted. I felt the room spin. I asked her if she understood what she was saying. She was telling me she was going to leave our home to live with another man, and she expected me to just accept it. Amanda looked at me with this strange calm and said it was only temporary. She needed space to evaluate whether our marriage was really what she wanted anymore. I begged her not to go. I told her that if she left, it would be the end of us. She insisted I was overreacting. She repeated those words again, "This is not cheating, Gregory. This is me finding myself." 2 days later, I watched Amanda pack a suitcase in our bedroom. I stood in the doorway, unable to move or speak, as she folded clothes and placed them carefully into the bag. When she finished, she looked at me and said she would stay in touch, that this was not the end. I asked her if she realized what the neighbors would think when they saw her leaving. She said she did not care what anyone else thought. Then she picked up her suitcase, walked out the front door, got into her car, and drove away. I stood in the middle of our living room, completely numb, staring at the space where she used to be. Max came over and pressed his head against my leg. I sank down onto the floor and hugged him, trying not to fall apart. The smell of her perfume still lingered in the air, and it made everything worse. In the days that followed, I moved through life like a ghost. I went through the motions of working, but I could not focus. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a message from Amanda that explained everything, that said she was coming home. But those messages never came. After about a week, Mrs. Patterson stopped me while I was getting the mail and asked if Amanda was away on a business trip. I forced a smile and said she had some things to take care of. But 1 week turned into 2, and 2 turned into 4. The neighbors started noticing. I could see it in their eyes when they looked at me, this mix of pity and curiosity. One afternoon, Mr. Patterson came over and said if I ever needed anything, I should not hesitate to call. I thanked him, knowing full well that he had figured out what was happening. The first week after Amanda left was the hardest. I felt completely paralyzed. I would sit at my desk, staring at my computer screen, unable to do any real work. My manager noticed my productivity dropping, but did not say anything, probably assuming I was going through something personal. I called Amanda multiple times, but she never picked up. I sent her text messages asking if she was okay, if we could talk, if there was any way to fix this. She never responded. I kept asking myself what I had done wrong, replaying every conversation we had ever had, trying to find the moment where I failed her. The worst part was the nights. I could not sleep. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the empty space beside me like a wound that would not close. Max became my only companion. Every evening, I would take him on long walks through the neighborhood, passing by families sitting on their porches, laughing and talking, and I would wonder how my life had ended up like this. My best friend from college, Kyle, called me during the second week. I had not talked to him in months, but somehow he sensed something was wrong. When I told him everything, he was furious. He said Amanda's claim that it was not cheating was complete nonsense, that she was lying to herself and to me. He insisted I come out for a drink so we could talk face to face. We met at a bar downtown, and Kyle listened as I poured out everything I had been holding in. He told me that Amanda was chasing an illusion, that Damien probably saw her as nothing more than a temporary distraction, and that eventually she would realize what she had thrown away. But even though his words made sense, they did not stop the pain. I asked him why she did not choose me, why I was not enough. Kyle looked me dead in the eye and said this was not about me. It was about her and the choices she was making. He said she was running from something inside herself, and no amount of love from me could fix that. By the third week, I realized I could not just sit around waiting for Amanda to come back or for my life to magically get better. I had to take control. I started going back to the gym, something I had neglected for months while trying to keep up with Amanda's schedule. At first it was hard. My body felt weak and unfamiliar, but slowly I started feeling stronger. I also called a therapist and scheduled an appointment. During my first session, I admitted that I felt like I was not good enough, like I had somehow failed as a husband. The therapist looked at me with kindness and said, "You are enough. This situation is about her choices, not your worth." Those words hit me harder than anything else. I had been blaming myself for Amanda's decision, but the truth was, I could not control what she did. I could only control how I responded. The fourth and fifth weeks became about rebuilding. I threw myself into my work, volunteering for a major project at my company that required long hours and intense focus. My manager was impressed and told me I was more productive than I had been in months. It felt good to be valued for my work again. At home, I started cleaning and reorganizing. I took down the pictures of Amanda that were hanging in the living room and packed them away in a box. It was not out of anger. It was out of necessity. I needed space to heal, and having constant reminders of her everywhere was making it impossible. On Saturdays, I started going hiking with Kyle and a group of his friends. One afternoon, we reached the top of a mountain trail, and I stood there looking out over the city, feeling the sun on my face and the wind in my hair. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. I thought to myself, I am going to be okay. Throughout all 6 weeks, Amanda only reached out a handful of times with short, vague text messages. She would say, "I am fine. I just need more time." I stopped responding after a while. It was not because I was trying to punish her. It was because I was learning to respect myself. I realized that constantly chasing after someone who did not want to be with me was only hurting me more. Around week 5, I started looking into divorce lawyers. It was not because I wanted the marriage to end. It was because I needed to prepare myself for the worst-case scenario. I met with a lawyer who asked me if I had any proof of infidelity. I told her that Amanda claimed it was not cheating, but that she was living with another man. The lawyer said that was more than enough evidence. By the end of the 6th week, I had reached a strange sense of calm. I was not healed, not by a long shot, but I was no longer drowning. On that final Sunday afternoon, I was outside doing some yard work. The weather was beautiful, and several neighbors were outside too, mowing their lawns or washing their cars. I felt a lightness I had not felt in weeks. Mrs. Patterson walked over and commented that I looked much better, more alive. I smiled and told her I was learning to accept what I could not change. I had no idea that just a few hours later, everything would explode in the most public way imaginable. It was around 4 in the afternoon when I heard a car pull up in front of the house. I was inside washing my hands in the kitchen sink after finishing the yard work. I glanced out the window and saw an Uber stopping at the curb. My heart skipped a beat when I saw Amanda step out. She looked terrible. Her hair was messy and unbrushed. Her eyes were swollen and red like she had been crying for hours, and her clothes were wrinkled like she had been wearing them for days. She stumbled up the walkway toward the front porch, and I could see her hands shaking as she reached the door. I opened it before she could knock. We stood there face to face, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. Then Amanda started crying. Her voice was loud and broken as she said, "Gregory, please, I was so wrong." I just stood there, not knowing what to say or do. Her voice got even louder, and I realized that people were starting to notice. Across the street, Mr. Patterson had paused while watering his lawn. The family next door had opened their front door and were standing there watching. Amanda did not seem to care, or maybe she did not even realize. She practically screamed, "Damien left me." He told me I was just temporary, that he had someone else the whole time. Then she dropped to her knees right there on the porch. She grabbed the hem of my shirt and sobbed, "I gave up everything for him. I left you, I left this house, I destroyed our marriage, and he threw me away like I was nothing." By now, half the neighborhood was watching. The young couple from 2 houses down had stopped their evening walk and were standing on the sidewalk staring. Mrs. Patterson was standing in her yard with one hand covering her mouth. Even the kids playing basketball next door had stopped their game to watch. Amanda did not notice any of them. She just kept crying and begging. She said, "Please, Gregory, you are the only person who ever really loved me. I made a terrible mistake. Please take me back." I stood there looking down at her, and I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me still loved her. Part of me wanted to reach down and pull her into my arms and tell her everything would be okay. But another part of me, the part that had spent 6 weeks rebuilding my self-respect, knew that I could not do that. I took a deep breath and spoke in a calm, steady voice. I said, "Amanda, you are right. I did love you. But the woman I loved would never have left me for a so-called special connection." Amanda looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. She said I was blind. I did not think. I did not realize what I was giving up. I shook my head. I told her, "You were right about one thing. At first, maybe it was not cheating. But the moment you chose to leave this house, the moment you chose him over me, that was your decision. Now you have to live with it." Amanda grabbed my hand and said, "I want to come home. I want to be with you again." I gently pulled my hand away and said, "This is not your home anymore. You gave it up 6 weeks ago when you walked out that door." I looked around at the neighbors who were still watching. I said, "You wanted drama, but I do not. I have spent the last 6 weeks learning how to respect myself, and I am not going to throw that away now." Amanda stayed on her knees, sobbing for what felt like an eternity. I stepped back inside the house and quietly closed the door. My hands were shaking as I stood there in the entryway, but it was not from weakness. It was from strength. I had just done one of the hardest things I had ever done, and I knew it was the right choice. I could hear Amanda crying outside for a few more minutes, and then the sound faded. I looked out the window and saw her standing up, pulling out her phone and calling another Uber. Within 10 minutes, she was gone. The neighbors slowly went back to their activities, and Mrs. Patterson caught my eye through the window. She gave me a small, approving nod, as if to say, "You did the right thing." In the weeks that followed, I filed for divorce. Amanda did not fight it. She signed the papers without any argument, and our marriage officially ended in a courtroom with nothing but a judge's signature. I wish I could say I felt nothing, but that would be a lie. I felt sadness. I felt relief. I felt anger. But most of all, I felt free. I was no longer tied to someone who did not value me, someone who could walk away and then expect to walk back in whenever it suited her. I do not hate Amanda. I really do not. In a strange way, I am grateful for what happened. She taught me one of the most important lessons I will ever learn, which is that you cannot love someone more than they love themselves. You cannot save someone who does not want to be saved, and you should never ever let someone else define your worth. When Amanda said this is not cheating, she was lying to herself just as much as she was lying to me. She convinced herself that what she was doing was acceptable because she did not want to face the truth. But the truth always comes out eventually. And when it did, she lost everything. About a year after the divorce was finalized, I met someone new. Her name is Sophia, and she is a freelance graphic artist with a passion for hiking and a love for dogs. We met at a coffee shop when Max accidentally knocked over her iced latte, and instead of getting upset, she laughed and spent the next 20 minutes playing with him. Sophia is everything Amanda was not. She is honest, grounded, and drama-free. She does not play games or make me question where I stand. She just shows up day after day and chooses me the same way I choose her. I have learned that the right person does not make you doubt yourself. They do not twist words or redefine reality to justify their actions. They are just there, steady and true. Sometimes I wonder what happened to Amanda after everything fell apart. I heard through mutual friends that she left Portland and moved to another city to start over. I hope she found whatever it was she was looking for. I hope she learned to be honest with herself, but I do not think about her often anymore. I have moved on not because I stopped caring, but because I realized that holding on to the past was only keeping me from building a future. The neighborhood still talks about that day sometimes. I can see it in their eyes when they wave hello or stop to chat. They remember the woman who came back screaming and crying on my porch after 6 weeks with her boss. They remember me standing there calm and collected, closing the door on a chapter of my life that no longer served me. And maybe that is exactly how it was supposed to happen. Maybe the universe needed witnesses to hold her accountable for her choices. Maybe I needed witnesses to remind me that I made the right decision. As for me, I found peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from pretending nothing happened, but the kind that comes from facing the pain head-on, working through it, and coming out stronger on the other side. I chose myself when it mattered most, and that choice changed everything. So let me ask you, have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose your own self-respect over someone you loved? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you or helped you see your own situation more clearly, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about love loss and finding your way back to yourself. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it reminds you that you are always enough no matter what anyone else says. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember, the right person will never make you question your worth.